Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media and tech-related production questions every single day. Alex Lindsay from the Office Hours Founder Suite from the Bay Area is our reader today. Alex, what's our first question?
Our first question is from Douglas Carmichael, and Douglas asks, with Zoom integration in mimoLive, is there still any use case where mimoCall would be better?
And Ronnie Hofsoy is going to try to help us out here. Ronnie?
Yeah, we've been using mimoCall at least during the later stages of COVID, and it was due to need more than want. We had some issues with it and got it to run pretty good from time to time. This was basically on our side. We had some hardware that was making it difficult for us. And then when we started using Zoom, we did the normal thing with just pinning. We had a lot of pin farming machines that was able to solve that in a better way for us. And we just threw all those HDMI into the switcher, and I was happy with that. And then suddenly some guys that did theater and was studying and was also programming called Liminal ET was creating something called Zoom OSC, and soon after Zoom ISO. And from that point onwards, we stopped using the call functionality built into Zoom, built into mimoLive. And when mimoLive just a few months back released the final version of the Zoom integration, we've never looked back. We are continuously using mimoLive in those productions where we are using mimoLive natively. So we need mimoLive as a kind of back for everything we do. In other situations, we still use Zoom ISO for that and have a baseband video coming out of a decklink system. So we stopped using mimoCall and started using Zoom for everything we do of remote casts.
Thank you. Great answer. So hopefully, Douglas, that helped you get oriented with all this stuff. Next question.
Next question is from Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida. And Jeff asks, thoughts on using the OBS hybrid MP4 output format?
Alex is going to help us out here. Alex?
Yeah, this is new from OBS, and let's see if we can pull this up. This is their little write-up here. I guess it's not new. This is July 12th, 2024. So they're talking about building a new MP4 mixer. All I would say is that it may turn out to be something in the future, but you always want to be careful. One step ahead, you're a leader. 2 steps ahead, you're a martyr. And this one's like 1.5 to 1 3/4 step forward. So, I can see what they're trying to do as far as solving things, but writing things in your own, starting to make up new ways of writing things is super dangerous. Like when will you be able to open that file, and is it going to remain a standard? I would be very, very, I would read it and I can talk to people about it at dinner parties. I would never use it in a production.
There's the voice of wisdom speaking to you. A lot of things sound great on paper, and some of them turn out to be great. Others, not so much. Next question.
Next question is from Russell in DFW Airport, Texas. Wow, right from the airport.
The Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, not a small name.
What is the best audio tool you have bought in a while? For example, the Sound Bullet, which I seem to survive every show by using.
Ronnie, you have some thoughts on this? What's your fave?
Without exceptions, the Sound Bullet is a killer tool for easy to check lines and both send signal and receive signal. So if you haven't looked into Sound Bullet as an audio tech and stage personnel, you should really do that. Sonect, which is producing the Sound Bullet, also have another product that I purchased some time back, which is called Soundwire. It comes in 2 versions. One is the USB version, and what is actually helping us with this is to not have a big audio interface for our many MacBook Airs, etc. And in those cases that we do not want to use the normal headphone output, which can contain noise, give us earth grounding problems, etc. And to prevent having other equipment like DI boxes, etc., we use these on wires a lot of the times, and they have a really, really good DA converter with a really, really good signal. So if you're into Sonect's products, they are high quality and a little bit on the expensive side, but who cares?
I don't think a product so much, but I will say that I've been working the last couple of days. Some of you famously know that I've been having trouble with my mic mute for a long time. I was using a hardware mute, a relatively inexpensive one. Well, we decided to take a shot at replacing it with something online and digital. So Mickey and I have been spending evenings a good little bit, and he's been helping me work through an implementation of a Stream Deck for muting using Companion and using a variety of other tools. So for me, it was just the process of looking into the back end of digital audio, the way it works now on the web, starting to understand for me the very beginnings of the complexity and the power that the internet gives us now in terms of remote utility, being able to bring in all these digital tools where before we had simple analog tools, but that didn't necessarily work the best. Now my mute is totally silent. I have it on a Stream Deck. I can program it. We're investigating more things we can do in this chain because it's all triggered. It's all digital and it all works in the cloud basically for everyone. So it's been another learning situation, and I embrace those because, boy, if nothing else, if you stay still in this environment, I think you fall behind. There's just so much possibility out there, but it requires you to grit your teeth and say, okay, this has kind of worked for a while, but I'm going to go ahead and try to improve it. And you can, but there's a learning tax for some of us that have been around for a long time, and you got to embrace that, I think. My 2 cents anyway. Next question.
Next question is from Sigmund Judge in London, and Sigmund asks, planning for immersive video, what would be the best spatial audio setup to pair with Blackmagic's upcoming camera? As for research, is there an Atmos visualizer for the Mac? How would you go about feeding an Atmos-capable Apple TV box into macOS?
A lot of questions there, and Ronnie Hoff's always going to try to break some of it down for you. Ronnie?
Yeah, that's not. I have not an answer for every question, but what I've been planning is exactly to do this. So I started my process by purchasing a MixPre 6, which can have all the necessary inputs for doing this. I'm pretty sure Alex would join in afterwards and talk about microphones. And what our workflow is planned so far, and we might change that, is doing the recording on those MixPres, of course having it synced with the cameras. And after that, we tend to think that we should just put it into DaVinci Resolve and using their internal mixer or DAW setup, and we're still in the thinking box of what type of plugins we should probably get in addition to that. So I'm pretty sure we will be needing some more externalized plugins, either as a part of DaVinci Resolve or totally externally. So this is how we have so far we have gotten today.
Alex, you want to weigh in on this? Yeah, of course, Mickey says it depends on what the content is, and so I think that's and I think that one of the things that I would say is that it depends, again, as Mickey said, it depends on the kind of content you want to create. But if you're capturing with that camera, the one thing that I've become very conscious to watching spatial video, and spatial video that I've done in the past as well, is that you need to capture spatial audio in some way, shape, or form. Now, I'm experimenting with a lot of things. I think that the mic, I'm testing right now the DPA 5100, which I'm super happy with, as far as getting discrete 5.1 out of the mic itself. I've also been playing with the Voyage USB based second order ambisonic mic, the Ambio single order, and even down to the H3 Zoom H3 in different levels of resolution and noise. And so those are the things that I've been kind of playing with. I think that right now, the two things that I like the most are the Voyage and the 5100. The Voyage being a second order and being quieter. It's in a USB out. I find that it's a little less noise than the Ambio. But there's some disagreements there related to that. But I find, and Mickey and I disagree. He says, I disagree about the need for surround or Amazonic mic for immersive video. It's nice to have, but definitely not a necessity. I find immersive video shot in an environment without the mic to be almost unwatchable. I've gotten kind of the point where I keep on seeing examples that are created, and I'm just like, it feels like you just sucked all the oxygen out of the room. And I don't think it has to be used 100%, but I think that it's going to be a big deal, and I think people who use it well are going to be able to take advantage of that. It was the reason I've gotten so into it is because I started listening to stuff with it, and that's the hard part. Is I think that it's okay if you don't listen to the stuff that was recorded with the video, but as I'm recording spatial and immersive with immersive audio or some version of that. I find myself when I listen to someone who did it without that, great Atmos mix, all the surround built in, but without the environment, I'm like, meh. I think that I'm trying to figure that out. So I don't think it has to be all of the mix, but I think that it's going to be an important component to a lot of the mixes that are coming.
I just want to congratulate both of you because you really learn when there's a debate between people who understand and experience this stuff. And I love polarized opinions because then you get to settle in the middle and decide for yourself. And this is one of the things that I think Office Hours does really well. So different perspectives, at least to my mind, always welcome here.
And Mickey said, room and ambient mics for sure, but not necessarily surround or Amazonic mics. Yeah, and I think he's right in the sense that we just have to capture a bunch of the environment that's there and put it back in. I'm playing with those mics because I don't think that those are going to be the only mics that I use, but I feel like I need to capture something from the point of view of the camera.
I don't know why, but this reminds me of people who don't understand why room tone is so valuable. And, you start editing. If you have it, you realize it's a much more natural and organic sound. If you're missing it and it drops away, in some cases you don't notice if some other things are going on sonically, but it can get you into problems if you don't understand the nuance of why the sound of the room is an important part of the mix. So these little things may seem like picking at stuff, but it really does matter. And boy, if you've ever been in a theater where you're listening to a quiet scene and room tone goes back and forth in and out because they're cutting back and forth between cameras that have different sound profile. Oh my gosh, it's annoying. So it can be really a big deal. Next question.
I'm sorry. I forget that I'm the reader.
It's okay. You usually do this. It makes perfect sense.
Next question is from John Snyder in Reno, Nevada. And John asks, is the Atem Mini Extreme with Mixeffect still the best bang for the buck for most people?
Ronnie, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. We use it all the time, and the options and the possibilities that are being utilized by having mix effects in your toolbox is amazing. What is kind of moving forward? It will be really, really exciting to see if and how all these new functionalities in the new products coming from Blackmagic will be handled by Atem, that is the developer of Mixeffect. So I think it's a bright future based on rumors I've heard, but we'll have to see. For now, if you're not going full out on using software solutions, I think the Extreme paired with Mixeffect is a really powerhouse.
Alex?
I think one of the big advantages of having a hardware switcher is that it's outside of all the other computer stuff that you might be doing, and you don't have to figure out how to pipe it from one computer to the other. It's just video. So I think that is why I tend to lean towards using hardware for a lot of things that I'm doing. Do use software as well. Especially when we're doing kind of more virtual events. But as soon as I start plugging in a bunch of cameras, I tend to want to move to hardware. And I think that the Extreme has proven to be a pretty good solution for that. So the nice thing about it for me, again, is that it just generally just does what I ask it to do. Can it do everything that some of the software tools can do? No, but does it do, and does it do what I ask it to do when I ask it to do it? And the answer is generally yes. Mixeffect adds a lot of value to it because it just suddenly you have access to a lot of the things, and you have an interface that you can build all kinds of other things on top of. So I'm a big fan of that. I like I don't like using, I will admit that I don't like using software tools as webcams, like as the webcam interface where I'm going to put a bunch of stuff into it. I don't find that to be I find that invariably there's some idiosyncrasies that are created that way. And so I like the fact that I have a switcher that ties into whatever piece of software I'm going to use. It's just the webcam that shows up. And I think that it's a more stable solution than using software.
Don't forget, every day our show is driven by your questions. You can ask them, chat about them, and vote on them in Mukana, which is our live Q&A system. Go to officehours.global/join. We'll send you an email within a day or two, and once you've done that, you can ask, vote on, which is very important because the questions that get the most votes we bring up to the top of the list, and they get the most time in discussion. But regardless, if you do that, officehours.global/join, you can become a little more integrated a part of the community should you choose to. Thanks. And next question.
Next question is from Alex Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. And Alex asks, I was listening to an interview with a cinematographer about how you should always light your backgrounds first and then the subject. Discuss different approaches to set and talent lighting.
Alex, start us off.
It's a lot easier to understand the context of what you're putting your subject into if you light the background first. So if you make the background look the way you want it to look, now you're feeding that person, that you're having that person come into it. You may have a specific idea of how you want to light them, but you need them to integrate. In most cases, you need them to integrate with the background. So if you do that, then having the background already established and figured out, and usually that's the biggest lights and the hardest lighting process is to deal with the background. And so I think that's why they're leaning in that direction. I don't think I've ever worked in a place where I lit the foreground first. I don't, maybe in 20 years, I can't imagine any time when I lit the foreground before the background.
Yeah, I will say this. I agree 100%. Background is very important. When you're first beginning, you're going to focus on the person you're lighting if you're doing an interview kind of circumstance with a background around that person. And I can't argue with that. I mean, get the people to look great regardless of what's going on first. But very soon, once you've understood how to light a person so that they stand out and look great in the scene, you start realizing that the biggest mistakes people who are beginning their career often make is they pay so much attention to the subject that they do not pay attention to the background. They don't light it or even clean it up properly. And anybody who's experienced on set, you get a camera picture up, and those two things you do, you make sure the person looks great, but then you literally scan every corner of every frame so that you don't get into that terrible circumstance where you realize that you had this lovely set and the interview went well, but you left that big Starbucks cup over in the corner. And now as soon as somebody brings it out, you can't not see it. And you realize that just by not paying attention to controlling everything in your frame, which is the subject and the environment your subject is in, you've made a serious mistake. So I might, again, for beginners, do get your people correct. Get them lit so that they look great. You will never make a mistake doing that, particularly if you're trying to build yourself in a corporate practice or something like that. If you can make decision makers in corporate life look good, light them well so that they really look great, you'll get called back a lot because they love that. But when you get to the point where you've got that down, I can't agree more with this idea of the cinematographer you're quoting says about make sure the backgrounds are done properly in both lighting and checking to make sure there are no errors back there. Next question.
Next question is from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. And Paul asks, how does Generative Extend work in Adobe Premiere Pro?
Oh, this is something you do a good little bit, right, Alex, with your Photoshop extended backgrounds?
I haven't done it. This is extending the time So this is saying my clip is not long enough, and I just want you to put another couple seconds on the end, or another couple frames on the end. One of the big problems that we have is that people don't understand the power. People going out and shooting for us, if a shooter doesn't do a lot of editing, they don't understand head and tail. Like so they like shoot and they start rolling, and then they're capturing everything, and then they stop as soon as everyone's done. You can always tell someone who does a lot of editing, because they'll start rolling before anything's happening. You're like, what's going on at the beginning of this frame? And then they'll go, and then people will stop doing whatever they're doing, and the camera stays very still, or just drifts just very, very slowly, and they're putting on a couple seconds on the end to give themselves the handles that they need to finish a shot, because you might want to transition, you might want to have a hang there for a second, you might want to do a lot of other things. And people who shoot and don't edit almost never do that, like unless they're really well trained. But usually if you edit your own stuff, you learn to do that pretty quickly. And so so what Adobe is doing is giving the editor the ability to say, oh, I really wish that shot hung for another second or two, so that I could do a transition, or I could get to the next thing, or whatever it is, so that a lot of times it can be also trying to cut to a beat, trying to cut to something else that's happening. So it'll let you basically just extend that out, and it's going to make up a bunch of frames. It looks pretty impressive. I don't know if it looks perfect, but I think especially if you're extending it as it goes into a transition, a lot of times you run out of frames when you're trying to do a crossfade, or you're trying to, spin something else into it. And if that's the case, I think it's going to be great. I don't think I would make it a hero shot and extend it with AI just yet, but there you go.
Yeah, it's a nice tool to have. I can't tell you the number of times I tried to fake that by doing a still frame, and I can extend this.
Yeah. Or you do a rock and roll where you kind of go back and you pull it back again, and you just go in reverse. If it's
none of them work really well. Yeah. Every time you watch it back, you go, "Oh, I wish I just left the camera running and finished that shot, or started it a little early." Next question.
Next question is from Kent in Madison, Ohio. And Kent asks, when setting up a studio for different types of live streaming and recording video and audio podcasts, is there a reason to have a video mix and an audio mix, or is it better to bring audio and video together? Recommendations on devices.
Oh, okay. So whether double system or single system makes more sense. Those are the classic terms of, are you muxing your audio and video together into a single stream to capture, or are you recording them on separate devices? Alex, dive in.
I mean, oftentimes we'll merge them together at the very end in a double system. So oftentimes if you're trying to do a podcast, we may merge those back to some kind of recorder that's getting audio and video back together. But it's pretty rare for me to want to control everything. Obviously, you can't control the video and the audio, but you can control audio inside of your video if you put it inside of something like an Atem switcher. But you're really relying on something that's not their area of strength. That is not, when you have a switcher trying to do audio stuff, in my opinion, you're asking it to, you're asking a car to be a truck, or a car to be a boat, and so I think that I would recommend trying to keep those pipelines, having individual control. On a podcast or live streaming, your mics are all going into some kind of mixer. You're controlling it there with all the tools that you want with your mixer. And then you have your video, and you're doing all the cutting with your video. And then at the end, pull them together, resync them, and put them out. It really, you may not start that way because you don't have the money to have two systems running at the same time. It might be cheaper to run it into your Atem, but you're going to find that over time you're going to lean that direction because you just have a lot more control and you're going to make better products.
Ronnie Hofsaway.
Totally agree. We tend to have different roles in our productions, and depending on how much you are going to do, and especially if it's live, if it's recording, that's a different thing because you can fix things in post. But if this is a live stream, that's always a good thing to have one person doing the audio mix and just concentrate on that. If they use headphones in a different room or on speakers, the result is much better using a dedicated sound mixer. And good sound mixers, the new developed series of CQ that I'm using here on my desk is really advanced. It's not the best in the market, of course, but it's really cheap and affordable, and can do a lot of tricks, and that will make you able to isolate and do the sound as a separate part, because it is a separate part. And there are few, if none, ever vision mixers or switchers that are set up to do both audio and image at the same time. Atem is kind of a hybrid product that makes it possible for you, especially the mini series, even if it's Extreme, ISO, or the normal HDMI versions. You have some form of audio functionality in it, but we normally bypass that all the time. We never use that part of the Atem. It's much better to have that audio going a separate way and then synchronize everything before going into the encoder. So as a short answer to your question, yes, it's better to separate them. And no, if you are forced budget-wise to do everything in one unit like the Atem, you should do that first and then add audio mixer when you can afford it.
Yeah, I'm going to address this by going to a little ahead of this process. I agree with everything that's been said. In your workflow, you absolutely must be able to either synchronize or break apart audio and video, because there may be different things you want to do to each of those streams. Since the advent, since 2012, 13, we kind of moved really rapidly to file-based workflows where you will get camera masters now that synchronize audio and video and keep them muxed in a single file format. That is pretty common now with a lot of cameras. So sometimes it will come in and sync. I have found there are certain circumstances, particularly quick turnaround and things like that, where I never want to break apart that muxed file. I want to leave the synchronization that the camera put on video and audio, and I want to preserve that all the way down to the final edit and mix and things like that. That is not the only way to do things. And I would argue you must be able to break them apart and manage your audio and video separately when you need to, in a fashion that doesn't lose sync, because that's always the danger. That muxed file with audio and video together wasn't really nice, because unless you break it apart, the sync remains from the beginning to end, provided your sample rates are all set correctly. But once you break things apart, management is critical, and I would never want to work on a system where I could not work separately in video and audio. Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael, and Douglas is asking, ETC has released the next generation Hog moving light consoles with the Grand MA ruling the touring market. Where does the Hog fit in?
Ronnie, are you Hog system friendly? Do you understand how that works? That's an odd naming convention.
Well, I have been using a Hog a few years back. I haven't looked too much into the new series, but I've used, of course, the Grand MA, which is as the question signs. That's the big dog. So ETC has a lot of products, and I would, without knowing the US market, I would tend to think of Hogs as kind of smaller stages, maybe churches or house of worships, and minor budget productions or tours, because if we look at the riders that almost everyone has, at least here in Europe and in the Nordic countries, it's Grand MA all the time. There is nothing else than that. And when we are looking at the different type of venues, you can see that there are other products as well. So I think Grand MA has close to 80% of the market of the big events, and also a Hog could be probably used in smaller venues and in more corporate type of settings. But this is how I see it. I might be wrong because we tend to use the GrandMA all the time. So, that's how it is.
Don't forget, we are continuing to mount new shows and explore things. On Mondays, Extra Hours takes place. Grant Whitehead from Australia does one at 6 p.m. Pacific time, so if you're having trouble getting the timing right for the daily shows. We're also adding things like tonight I'm going to be talking to Jeff Keithley on one of our special shows, so that's going to be this evening at 6 p.m. Thursday, The Rundown with David Paskin. David hosts a panel, takes a deep dive into the why behind the latest tech shaping the world. So we're continuing to roll out new things. Keep your eyes open for them. Next question.
Next question is from Robert A. Ober in Houston, Texas. And Robert asks, hey, folks, anybody use the Magewell 32090? If so, how is it with the Mac in particular?
Alex, how do you think it's doing?
So I haven't used this one specifically, but I've used a ton of Magewell digitizers, and so this has got an HDMI loop through. As you can see here, it has a USB connection out. It's a very small little box, and I've got lots of different versions of these, and they are all super solid. Magewell grew up. I mean, I remember when we started buying these were cheap little boxes that were thin and barely, you were like, I can't believe this actually worked, but it always worked. But we used them for Hangouts for a long time as our kind of camera interface. And they were super solid, but they always felt like they were going to break apart. And so now they're just super solid, and so they're the great little boxes. Mickey Macachor says he's got a couple of the SDI versions and they work well.
There you go. Next question.
Next question is from David Matika in Dublin, Ireland. And David asks, I would like to use a Mac Mini to manage Dante, NDI, and control traffic. It is normal practice to use separate Ethernet connections, total of 3, out of the Mac Mini into 3 separate VLANs. And is it necessary to put up virtual VLAN interfaces for each?
Piers Ronnie Hosway has some experience with this. Ronnie, want to get in?
Yeah, so we do similar stuff in our facilities and the stuff that we are flying with or moving with. So one thing to just make sure, please do not use the built-in interface. The Ethernet that are built into most Macs that we have tested has been very problematic of transporting traffic reliable, and that has to do with the hardware that are in most of the Macs. So if you're using Thunderbolt Ethernet, make sure it's 1 gigabit because there are different type of chipsets. And if you're using USB, be very sure that you have a chipset that is known for working good with Dante and NDI. Some of these tend to get a little hot for some reason. So I would also make sure that you choose one that has a good reputation and that is actually being able to have control over its own temperature. When the speed go up, the temperature goes up. It seems to be the going fact. And you also have, you say you are separating traffic into different VLANs. Yes. You need to have VLAN interfaces configured for all the VLANs that you actually are going to be communicating on. And in the chat, there is a question about what is meant by control traffic. I guess that would be something like setting up the routing of, for instance, the Dante with the Dante controller, but I'm not sure. So just make sure you don't use the built-in interface.
Alex?
I think you're asking that Mac to do a lot. So I don't think, I would not recommend going down this path. You can, start to think about things. I mean, start to think about that network overall. But if you're starting to run all of these different things at one time, I think you might want to start thinking about a Netgear 4250, number one, and also just really have some conversations with Mickey, with Jeff, with other folks about how to build a network that's properly configured for this. But trying to have your Mac Mini do all of those things, I think you're probably going to have some issues during a live show. if you try to do that there. So I would recommend having some conversations in this community, but start to look at using proper hardware to manage that network.
If you want to dive in and get a quick question into the show, don't forget you can also use askofficehours.global. That's something you can type into your web browser, askofficehours.global, put it in there. That will get you into kind of the quickest process. I just put the QR code down here on the screen, so if you want to grab a camera and take a quick shot of that, it gets you to the same place. That's askofficehours.global. Those questions kind of go through the system really quickly and can get into the show fast. They also are persistent, so we'll stay around for a couple of days if you're a regular show watcher and you want to wait for your reply there. That's askofficehours.global. Next question.
Next question is from Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas, and Paul asks, did Elgato come out with a new prompter or anything new at NAB that is worthy of professional media production standards?
Oh, an opinion question. And Alex Lindsay will have one. Alex?
I don't think the professional media production standards is really Elgato's target market. Like, I don't, and it's not that they produce bad products. I just don't think that that's necessarily, I mean, the Stream Decks, I guess, are something that a lot of people use, but the other stuff, I'm not sure if they're, it's aimed at a prosumer market, and I think they do a pretty good job of doing that. That said, I didn't spend any time in their booth, so it's not a target area that for me that I would go, oh, I'm going to go check out what Elgato's releasing. So I don't know if anything. I didn't look at their website. I didn't have time before the show to check that out.
I just did a quick search, and under winners announced at AV from AV Technology in the Best of Show, what shows up but the Elgato prompter. So somebody noticed it and said that it's
at least new though.
Yeah, I'm not sure it is either, but it was at least in the news for.
I'm curious what it takes to be a winner at NAB, because it feels like it feels like an Oprah show. It's like you win, and you win a prize, and you win a prize, and you get a prize, and you get a statue, and you get a thing. Like, it just seems like there's like.
Yeah, you never can tell. So it's a product. It's been out there. Some people seem to be having good work in it. And your level of requirement for a prompter. I mean, a serious person like Courtney, who has an Emmy behind him for helping to invent some of digital teleprompting. They might look at this and go, that's not really a teleprompter the way I think of one. And he's thinking of distributed on-set teleprompting for large TV stations and things like that. But it might work perfectly well.
If you're only going to, the main thing is if you're only going to have it, an image coming out of your computer into the teleprompter, which is what I think probably 90-95% of teleprompter users do.
Exactly.
I think that the Elgato works great. I think that a lot of us want to be able to route all kinds of things into the teleprompter, and as soon as you do that, you need an HDMI input.
Yeah, and so. Yes and no, and in between, and it depends, our favorite answer on office hours. Let's not depend on going to the next question. Let's actually do it. Next question.
Next question is from Steve Holden in Manchester, UK. And Steve asks, I connect a Iiyama monitor from the Atem 2 with a Blackmagic SDI to HDMI converter and receive an intermittent error out of range. When connecting an MDHX, there is no error. Is this likely an EDID issue, sending 1080p 50 hertz, which is compatible?
Ronnie Hoffsway is going to try to help you out here. Ronnie?
Yeah, if only I had a pound for every time we have this problem. This is a UK person, and he is probably using UK or European-based equipment, which is in what we call PAL land, known for the 25 and 50 frames per second. I'm pretty sure this monitor you are trying to use is not supporting 25 or even 50 frames per second. So when you are hooking that up in a decimeter...
I mean, he said that it's the monitor itself is compatible.
I have seen that a lot of times on the sales information, but when we try to just up the frequency. So one way to make sure this is the reason, just set your switcher to a higher FPS, like 60 frames per second, and test if the monitor is catching that. You can also just test the monitor by connecting it to a computer and try to manually reduce the frame rate on your computer screen and see what resolution it actually supports. And make sure that you, sometimes I don't know if this is with your Iiyama, sometimes I fix the problem, but just connecting or disconnecting the HDMI plug and connecting it once more, because the display sometimes refresh and watch this again. And the last reason could be the added information that is blocking you. But I don't see that this is the case here. This is a really, really bad PAL problem. We have numerous of monitors that doesn't work.
Alex?
Yeah, and definitely look, when you're using the MDHX, are you set to scalar output or in HDMI or SDI input to out directly to HDMI output? So, because if you set, if you're using just the base SDI to HDMI converter, it's not doing any kind of work inside to move things back and forth. Also, if you're coming out of your ATEM, is the ATEM set to automatic on frame rate, or is it set to a specific frame rate? Make sure that it's set to a specific frame rate and it's not automatic. If you're using, I know with an Extreme, if you change input 1 and it's set to automatic, it's going to change the frame rate. So you got to be kind of careful of that, because it might work at 50 but not work at 25.
Let's go to our next question.
Next question is from Manzi Elaine Alisi in Kigali, Rwanda. Elise, sorry. Question to Alexander Knight. I am facing an issue on getting a good interface of audio during live stream events. Last time you said you have a stack of Apollo Volts interfaces, and I would appreciate if I have one to test and use it. Thanks. So I think the question is getting a good interface for audio. I guess the question for you, Manzi, I'm going to jump into this one a little bit.
Hey, go for it.
Let us know. You have a good interface for audio. Is that, what are you trying to interface to? So what is the interface? Are you doing it to a Mac, a PC? Also, what kind of audio is coming from it, and what is upstream of it? Is it a mixer? Is it other things like that? So let us know a little bit more about where the audio is coming from and where it's going to, and we'll see if we can't find a solution for you.
Absolutely. The interface is important. Mickey also, Mickey said in production, this is why production reference monitors are what are used for production monitoring. So the whole chain of how you're listening to the audio that is going to be going out to your audience, all the parts of that are very important. So it's good that you're spending some time trying to get this right. That's a huge plus in your practice as you go forward, to know what the audio really sounds like going out to your audience. Let's go to the next question.
Next question is from Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. And Chester asks, I know there are lots of people with pics of the moon. Anyone have successful or good pics of the sun from down here on Earthland?
A little different challenge. The moon and the sun, we've got a few stops of brightness difference. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, so there's a variety of different films that you can get for your telescope, and they are almost opaque, so they're silvered, and usually what happens is when we get close to an eclipse, everyone starts talking about these because they want to, they put them, they want to put them on the front of their lenses. I've got pieces of it. Every eclipse I get more pieces. So now I've got a tracker, and I've got a filter for it. But this filter is important. If you put a lens and you point it at the sun, it will literally drill a hole through your sensor. So, the lens will just focus all that sunlight onto your sensor. Will not last very long, like seconds, before smoke's coming out of your camera. No one's going to be happy. So you put this cover on it. And then the next thing you need is something that's tracking. Even though the sun doesn't look like it's moving very fast, when you zoom in so that it's full frame, it's actually clipping, like it's moving along across that screen. And so you have to have something that's automatically tracking. It's not really tracking it. It's making the calculations that are necessary for it to keep moving with the way that the Earth and the sun are moving in interaction with each other. That said, that there's a lot of great, incredible images of the sun, probably more, in some cases, more visceral than the moon. The moon doesn't do very much. The sun does a lot, especially right now. We're near the height of its activity. So there's lots of sunspots and everything else, and we're just trying to survive this year, next year, without a big CME that knocks out everything forever. So we're almost through that. The next 10 years and then we'll have 10 years we can relax until the next time it comes up. But right now you get to see a lot of fireworks on the sun, and so absolutely, Kit Peak. If you go to their website, they're one of the top solar. They're out of Arizona, and they're one of the top solar telescopes in the world. And I actually went there when I was 10 years old, I think, and to see it. And there was just this giant sun that was the size of a wall that they had projected up from the telescope, and it's amazing. So anyway, yeah, there are plenty of ways to capture it. You just got to cut most of the light out.
Next question.
Next question is from Jim in Kansas. And Jim says, struggling yet again with keeping up with my to-do list. What all does the panel do to stay organized both personally and professionally?
Ooh, big topic, Jim, but let's dive into it. Alex, you're going to start off.
I use some pretty complicated tools. My tools are, so I just, you have to be kind of careful. I use iCal and Notes. For me, if I don't have anything, if it's not in my calendar, I don't have a meeting. Like if I look at my calendar in the morning and I don't see something in that space, I don't look again. So people can't really put things into my schedule the same day. I mean, they can, but I'm not paying attention. And so it has to be the next day out. In my notes in the morning, I usually sit down and I look at all the things that I had from the day before, move those forward, are the ones there. And then I think about all the things that have to get done that day, and I start working through them and I prioritize them. There's usually 3 things that have to get done. Like I don't usually tell people what they are because they feel bad because I put theirs lower than 3, but I make a decision about what 3 need to get done today, and I make sure that those get done. And then the other ones I keep on trying to cut through because then it makes me feel better and I get caught up more. But I know that there are things that have to get done, and I work on getting those out the door. A couple things that I do is, number one is it is almost impossible to reach me if you didn't schedule a meeting. Like it is like I have a handful of people that can reach me during the day between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. and 9 a.m. Nobody can reach me during the day. Like I'm on Do Not Disturb. I have 0 notifications. I will tell you, just try turning notifications off for a week. Just turn them all off, all of them. Turn them all off. All this crazy little I'm going to vibrate all the time and tell you things are going. Here's the secret. You don't need to move that fast. Really, you don't need to react that fast. Things can take a little bit of time, and then you build a pattern of I'm going to check I check my text messages pretty quickly. I check my email a couple times a day. Like if you're wondering why it takes me a long time to check email, is that I only check it maybe twice a day. And I do it specifically to because I just don't want to be distracted by it. So my life since I started taking that on has been a much more enjoyable life, and I get a lot more done without being just constantly reset. It's just the way we live our lives with all these electronic things and all these notifications is the way to live.
Ronnie?
Yeah, so personally, I'm in mostly using Mac, so I'm deep into the Apple way of doing stuff, and Notes being the most used to do stuff, collecting notes of everything and remembering, etc. It's done inside there, and if I need to share it with my family, I can just easily share that as well. And for and that is used also in our business or the professional way to handle this. But one of the things we've been doing, so we have a web agency and we have a production company, and we have a lot of stuff that has been going on. We've been using Figma for design. We've been using Asana for project tracking and stuff related to those ones. But and we also use Airtables for 2 or 3 years, and Airtables is mostly I would say Excel and numbers and docs, etc. on steroids, and you can kind of build your own interfaces and templates is great. They have a lot of stuff there. And the thing with Airtable and the one we are using these days are that you can organically transform the tool to fit your needs. And the one we are using today is this one. It's called Notion. Most of you people have probably heard of that before. And they have also introduced email as a part of it. I don't understand why. That is kind of weird. But they have calendar views. They make it possible for you to design your own workflows. You can have different type of views. You can have some people can have this view and are not allowed to do everything. You can have open forms that you can share widely on the web that people can use to enter data into the system. You can also share parts or one single item inside the Notion entire system with the people on the outside. And it's kind of good for sharing information and introducing people to our own workflows and not needing to purchase a license for every user, which some of the tools require you to do. So in all kind of our parts of both the agency and in the production company, Notion has been kind of the tool that we use for mostly everything, even HR manuals, etc. So it's becoming what you need it to be, and don't underestimate the time you will need to be configuring these tools, because that's a huge amount of hours that go into structuring these, even if you have templates that you can use as starting points.
Alex, you want to come back in?
I was going to say that as someone who didn't use Airtable until maybe a year ago or a little bit more than a year ago, and now it's opened every day, all day. It's life-changing. Like, it's life-changing. Like, you go back to, like, looking at Google Docs and Excel, and people send you Excel files, and you're like, what are you doing? And so, because there's so many ways that, I have one database that I'm looking at 8 different ways with different sorting, different groups, different whatever. The ability to aggregate information and manage it in your head and understand what's actually going on, it is life-changing. Like, and it's expensive, I will say that, but if you haven't played with Airtable, oh man, like, it's super powerful.
Speaking of tips, if you value what we do here, don't forget you can help. There are a few ways. Simply, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's the simplest way. You can volunteer at officehours.global. You can meet some great people and get involved in some really kind of cutting-edge projects, particularly about streaming and that kind of thing. Or you can simply donate at officehours.global/donate. We appreciate it. We are a 501c3. Next question.
Next question is from Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida. Jeff asks, anyone experiencing errors on audio tracks when opening, converting existing projects in DaVinci 20 beta, granted beta, no problem with new tracks?
Maybe that's one of the things about betas. Alex, have you run across this?
I've not run across it because I have learned over many years to never, ever, ever, never, never, never install a beta of Resolve. Like,
you sure about that?
Like, it is like, put it on if you want to see what the new thing is, put it on another machine. Don't even let it touch like the things that you're there. Like, it is like, I usually wait until there's at least not even the beta, but at least a 0.1 release. I find that they add so many features and they're so aggressive about growth that you have no idea, like, if the beta is living on the edge, like it is truly living on the edge. And then the 0.0 release still pretty much living on the edge, so you're really looking for a 0.1 release after they've kind of cleaned all that stuff up. And even then it'll be a little quirky here and there, but betas, it's not that I never put a beta on my Resolve. It's just that I did it a couple times and I was like, okay, I'm never doing that again. So
our beta, your alpha. Ronnie Hofsor.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that. Never use beta software in any form of production, and make sure you have backups of the original files if you're trying to import them into the new version of beta. Given that you are running the beta, I'm pretty sure that Blackmagic would love to hear back from you. So just find where you submit your bug reports and describe your case as good as possible and submit it, and they will probably fix it for the release.
And knowing personally a couple of people who are in charge of those programs at relatively large software companies, I will tell you, if you are a good beta reporter, you will get a lot of mind share inside the production and coding teams, because they're looking for people all the time who can not just find bugs, but document how the case where the bug showed up at a very specific level, because that's their, that's the reason for betas, is to send them out and get wider testing so they can fix things. So if you can help them do their job, they will love you for that, and you'll find a lot of inbox email as they try to form a relationship with you, because they know you're doing a great job at helping them accomplish what they want to accomplish. Next question.
Next question is from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. NAB. Adobe Media Intelligence and Search Panel, and HeyEddie.ai. These AI innovations, both winners of CineD's Best of Show. Yet another Best of Show. You get an award. You get an award for AI innovation. Aim to automate mundane editing tasks with nonlinear editing systems. Discuss.
And Alex raised his hand to discuss this.
There's going to be a lot of really interesting things that happen with this editing. I was just talking to someone yesterday, and now I can't remember whether it was on this show or it was somewhere else. I can't, it's all a fog. But I was talking to somebody about the fact that they and remind me if it was on the show, but they were talking about they opened up one of the new Resolve edit, where it's an AI editor, and you just throw in it was a round table discussion, and it just edited the whole thing. Like you just with,
I think that was CJ here on the show.
CJ, yeah, CJ was it. Yeah, so.
Oh no, CJ, or was it
maybe Alex? Maybe Alex Knight.
Alex Knight up in Canada. Yes.
Yeah, and he was just like, he just put everything into Resolve and let it run a multicam edit, and just did the multicam edit. And so I think you're going to see a lot of these things where a lot of the tedious tasks are done. I don't think it. I actually don't think that replaces. It replaces anything. I think it doesn't replace a person, other than it just gets through a whole bunch of menial stuff, so you can sit there and fine tune all the stuff, because you very rarely finish a project. You just run out of time, and I think that that being able to take a basic roundtable discussion and let the machine kind of do the thing, and then sit there and tweak it and get it just right, just means you're spending more time on the little details and not as much on the big ones.
Ronnie Hopsoy?
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm going to do this actually in this holiday. I have 2 sessions of 4 hours each with presentations, and I'm really eager to find out if it handles the pacing and if it actually is AI, and not just machine learning with some algorithms. I'm really wondering if it reads the content on the presentation slides and actually understand how long that would be needing to stay on as the primary cut, and then how it handles the reverberation in the room. There is some reverberation, even if this is a really professional auditorium, which is very bad audio-wise. So I'm really eager to start looking into this, but I'm sure this is something we will see coming more and more from all the vendors that actually do this stuff. And a few years back at NAB, I think it was Ross that actually had this voice recognition producer that was calling out the show caller, was actually calling out using his voice to do this live switching. And I would just hope to see more and more auto live switching as well, just not based on audio like we do today. So we use video follow audio, which we can override manually by doing this. So the time when we can start trusting the AI to just do everything. We just send out a suitcase with equipment and let it auto-produce itself. That would be really cool.
Fingers crossed, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. This has been interesting for me for a long time, and one of the reasons I was thinking about when I read this question, how many people, when raw video came out, I started seeing a lot of raw video end up on YouTube. And I thought to myself, why in the world would somebody take raw, edit it into a piece, and just toss it on the web? That's insane. It looks terrible. And I realize that a lot of people don't go beyond, I got a simple way to do this, and I'm not going to think past that, and I'm just going to, and I think we're going to end up with a lot of crud, to find a polite term for it, that's going to end up getting auto-generated and put on websites, and we're going to spend more time going through the dreck. I agree with Alex, who said it a few times, if you use this as a idea generator and a comping tool and things like that, it can be very powerful. But that means it's going to be filtered through a human being before it goes out the door. People are so excited to be more productive that I think we're going to get a ton of stuff that is unfortunately auto-generated and not of very good quality. Alex, did you want to get in on this?
Yeah, graphic designer said this about Illustrator. Suddenly everyone's going to be able to be a graphic designer, and we're all going to lose our job. The Cytex operator said this about Photoshop, these whippersnappers. And we did ruin a lot of things. I was one of those whippersnappers. I remember Matt Silverman, who's a good friend of mine, a longtime friend of mine. And when Apple was coming out of stuff, he said, iMovie, iDVD. He goes, I out of a job. He was very much. And he was like, that's a big bread and butter of a business. Well, Matt's still doing pretty well, So I think that it's all about evolving and continuing. And if you are producing a low level service and not adding value to it, eventually automation and ease of use is going to come and get you. So you have to constantly be hungry and constantly moving forward.
Yeah, if you settle for what the machine can do, anybody can do that.
Or even if you were doing something that as a human can do easily, and it was just like one of those things that was churning out money, you just need to know that,
the bots are coming for you.
We said 10 years ago, it was like, if you think that the job you have is brainless, don't worry, you won't have it for much longer, and so,
right.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here with us today. We truly appreciate the time you spend with us on Office Hours. Our thanks go out to everybody who's involved with making this show happen, particularly those of you who ask questions and put them into the show. You, our producers, are what makes this show happen every day, and we appreciate all the time you take to write out those questions, form them intelligently, and send them in. Thank you. To the panelists who show up every day and answer questions, freely donate their expertise to helping you kind of solve problems. Thank you to all of our panelists everywhere, and to the amazing back-end crew, all the people who are behind the scenes quietly pushing buttons, listening, following things, having meetings after the show on weekends, just constantly working in the background, not only to help ourselves learn how to do things, but just to help others. Thank you to everybody on the crew who puts in such amazing technical work. Our Teluk traversal today, the 48,000 miles, that's 76,000 kilometers, 376 million bananas for scale. Don't forget, Jeff Keithley's on tonight at 6. I'll be hosting that show, and then we'll be back here tomorrow and every day. Thanks for watching.
There we go. We did it again.
Yes. Again. We managed to fill up the whole show. We had a momentary, I wonder if we're going to get there.
Yeah, it wasn't close. We're still sending back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a fast show.
It seemed to be. It was a nice conversation.
Yeah, it's good. Great, everybody. See you.
Thanks to both of you for not making me have to answer a ton of questions. Two people. I'm glad it was the two of you.
Let's watch Bill answer.
Yeah, let's watch Bill dog paddle and desperately try to keep his nose above the water line.
Yeah. All right. See you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.